Welcome to the wonderful world of elasticity. It's part 3, elasticity in the firm's revenue. Basically, we're looking for how firms can use knowledge of elasticity to think about their revenue and maybe improve it. So, backing up, what is revenue? Total revenue is just the price times quantity demanded. In other words, how many units you're selling times the price that you're selling them at. One useful thing to think about is, how do you show the area of revenue looking at a demand curve? Well, if you're selling 1,100 at a price of 90 cents each, your revenue is that area of price times quantity, or base times height. So if the price were to increase, you'd be selling less. You want to compare your old revenue to your new revenue. And two interesting things happen. One is that when you increase the price, some of your buyers drop off, right? Or your existing buyers simply buy less. So the quantity demanded drops. But from the remaining buyers, you're getting an increase on the ones they used to buy at 90 cents and now are buying at $1.10. So that's the interesting part, right? Comparing the size of A to the size of C gets you towards answering the question, is it better off for me to raise the price or to lower the price? It depends. Does the price effect outweigh the quantity effect, or vice versa? So when demand is inelastic, as you might imagine, the price effect is the big story. You can increase the price of salt, and people won't reduce their demand for salt all that much. So if you're a salt maker, word to the wise, maybe think about a price increase. Your total revenue will rise. Here's a practice question. I'll read it, then you can pause and work the problem, then I'll share the answer. If the price falls from $60 to $40, total revenue changes by how much? And what would we call the demand curve? So is it A, $240 inelastic, B, $480 elastic, C, $360 inelastic, or D, $120 elastic? Go ahead and pause and work the problem. And the answer, so you took 60 times 6, compare that to 40 times 12, and you get a difference of 120, and it's an elastic demand curve. How do we know? Because when the price dropped, our revenue increased. So in other words, when demand is elastic, the quantity effect dominates the price effect. An increase in price causes significant reduction in the quantity demanded. So you would probably not want to raise your price a lot if you're selling an elastic good. Of course, everything depends on your costs. We'll talk about that another time. But revenue, looking at revenue alone, total revenue will fall when the price rises and vice versa. So if you're thinking of traveling by air, depends. Do you predict that the total revenue rises or falls? The price of airfare goes up. For most people, especially for leisure travelers, it's a fairly elastic demand. They'll put off that vacation and they'll go by car instead or whatever. So if you're traveling for necessity, then it's a little bit different. But since most travel is leisure, we expect that when price of airfare goes up, we lose a lot of people. And if you're selling a perfectly unit elastic good, then revenue doesn't really change if the price goes up or down, because the quantity response is exactly the same as the price change in percent terms. So it's a neutral situation for you. And here's a little proof. This gets into the weeds a little bit, but if you would like to see some numbers along with the graphs, here you go. Notice that the demand curve is a straight line here, but there is a point on the demand curve that gives you the highest revenue. So The question is, this demand curve has elastic and inelastic portions, and that's where we're going to turn our attention to next. But first, here's a practice question. The elasticity of demand for eggs, the price elasticity of demand that is, has been estimated to be 0.1. So, is that inelastic or elastic? And then the next part of the question is, if egg producers raise their prices by 10%, what will happen to the total revenue? A, it will increase. B, it will decrease. C, it won't change. I'll pause it for you to work the problem, and then I'll share the answer. All right, and the answer is, this is an inelastic good. So if you raise your prices by 10%, quantity will fall, but not by as much as 10%. So your price effect outweighs your quantity effect. You should expect an increase in total revenue. So if you're selling something as low cost and non-luxury as eggs, raising the price is not a bad bet, other things equal. Here's another one. If a fashionable clothing store raised its prices by 25%, what does that tell you about the store's estimate of the elasticity of demand for its products? Is it A, they think it's elastic, or B, they think it's inelastic? I'll pause. You can work the problem and then share the answer. And the answer? So anybody that's going to raise their prices is thinking that their product is inelastic, that the market can bear the price increase, not lose a whole bunch of sales, stay in business, maybe even increase revenue.